Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Go Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Okay. Oh, Bhagavatam's here. Yes, thank you. We are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 5, Chapter 14, The Forest of Enjoyment. And we are on text 20. So I'll just read because it's prose. I'll just read the verse. Sa eva punar nidra jagara grihito ande tamasi magna shunyaranya iva shetenanyat kinchana veda shava iva pavayida. Sa, that conditioned soul. Eva, certainly. Puna, again. Nidra, ajagara, by the python of deep sleep. Grihita, being devoured. Ande, in deep darkness. Tamasi, in ignorance. Magna, being absorbed. Shunya aranye, in the isolated forest. Iva, like. Shete, he lies down. Na, not. Anyat, else. Kinchana, anything. Veda, knows. Shava, a dead body. Iva, like. Apavidha, thrown away. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Shukadev Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. My dear king, sleep is exactly like a python. Those who wander in the forests of material life are always devoured by the python of sleep. Being bitten by this python, they always remain in the darkness of ignorance. They are like dead bodies thrown in a distant forest. Thus, the conditioned soul cannot understand what is going on in life. Purport. Material life means being fully absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Out of these, sleep is taken very seriously. While asleep, one completely forgets the object of life and what to do. For spiritual realization, one should try to avoid sleep as much as possible. The Goswamis of Vrindavan practically did not sleep at all. Of course, they slept some, for the body requires sleep, but they slept only about 2 hours, and sometimes not even that. They always engaged in spiritual cultivation. Nidrahara viharakadi vijitao. Following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, we should try to reduce sleeping, eating, mating, and defending. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're still in the forest of so-called enjoyment. The jiva has come to this forest with a very bizarre idea that I'm going to enjoy in the forest, carve out a little castle of enjoyment for myself. But it's a forest. It's full of wild creatures who will certainly foil that plan for enjoyment. The crickets, the gnats, the wild boars, here the python of sleep. That's the nature of the forest. In the same way, the material world, on the appearance, especially to someone who's not trained in knowledge, thinks, oh, there's some hope here. There's the possibility of etching out some gratification from this realm. But for one who zooms in, one can see that the forest is a place of danger. Just like when we walk in the forest in Poland, we go for our forest walk. It's very pleasant. And you can hear the birds singing, and it's serene, and it's in the mode of goodness. And then you might hear it suddenly a noise, which is a very alarming noise. Excuse me, it's Bhagavatam class, but I'll make the noise. That's the noise. What's that? Wild boar. These are like little tanks, little wild tanks. They're extremely dangerous, especially if it's a wild boar mother with her children. Then you just have to just pray to Krishna, please Krishna, help me out on this one. Because that wild boar mom can, if she feels that you're a threat to the kids, she'll go into attack mode. And even if you're carrying a baseball bat, it won't help you, because the wild boars are like little tanks. They can knock down a metal fence. They're so powerful. And there's so many other creatures in the forest. So here, the python of sleep is being described. And for the conditioned soul, sleep is something which is typically very desirable for a conditioned soul. Why? Why does the conditioned soul consider sleep to be a very desirable state? Yeah. Yeah, it's some relief. I just went through a tough day, 9-to-5 job, right? It's no longer, the carefree days of when I was growing up as a kid, assuming the days as a kid were carefree, but let's just say that. Now I'm grinding it in the material world, have to go to a job I don't like, deal with a boss I don't like, and I know I'm going to have to do this, not for a week or for 1 month, possibly for 30 years, because there's not much possibility of other occupations for me. So just that prospect is a daunting prospect. Oh my God, I'm going to have to do this for so many. So the soul wants to escape. The soul escapes through sleep, through entertainment, and through intoxication. So Prabhupada here says that out of these, sleep is taken very seriously, because the verse is about sleep. Ahara nidra bayamaitunam cha. Right? Eating, sleeping, sex, and defending. Fear. Prabhupada says not defending or fearing. Sometimes says fearing is very prominent, right? And it's natural, because we're in a realm where souls don't have the best intentions, right? Souls are possessed by a spirit of selfish gratification. So typically when one is engaged in selfish gratification, that selfish gratification is going to be at the expense of someone else. Yes? That's typically how it works. I want some selfish gratification, and someone's going to have to pay the price for that. Some tree, or some animal, or some human. So naturally, it's an atmosphere of fear. You can't just walk carefree down the street. And we experience it on Sankirtan, don't we? Excuse me, and then suddenly the person, not always, but sometimes the person seizes up. Who is this person? And what do they want? What do they want from me? They want something from me, because everyone wants something from them. No one just approaches them just to shoot the breeze and say hello, or everyone wants something, so that it becomes seized with some anxiety. What does this person want from me? And sometimes you're walking down the street and it can be dark outside, right? Just like when I'm coming back from Sankirtan. Sometimes I get carried away and, okay, one more book, and then, oh, no, it's dark. And then I'm coming back, and then there's just this little strip of forest here, a little strip of park, right? It's a little park, and there's forest on both sides. I think I'm going to avoid that and walk around, right? I'll go on the main street, because the mind becomes seized with fear. Or if you're in the forest during the day and walking, and okay, it's nice. But then as soon as darkness envelops the forest, and then you hear the different creatures, and then suddenly it's unavoidable. One feels some sense of anxiety, unless one is fully self-realized. Bhayam dvitiya binivesha tasyat. What is that fear coming from? That fear is coming from forgetfulness of Krishna. A lack of recognition that Krishna is there. Krishna is the supreme controller. Krishna is my protector. Krishna is my shelter. Just like Narada Muni. How old was he when his mom was passed away? 5 years old. It's completely dependent on the parents. Completely dependent on the mother, right? But his mother somehow was bitten by a snake, and suddenly he found himself alone. But he realized Vishnu. And then he was wandering with complete confidence. Yes, What is there to fear? Vishnu is my protector. Like Prahlad Maharaj, 5 years old. Mother was not there to protect him. Hiranyakashipu, his father, the most powerful person, was trying to kill him. But he was fearless because he had full recognition of the reality. So when the soul is in a state of sleep, the soul actually in this world is always in a state of sleep. Always, right? At night we go to sleep and we have some dream. And in the dream so many things can be happening. And of course all of that is illusion. It's not a real thing that's happening. We're imagining so many things. Oh yes, I'm a great star and people are cheering me from the audience, or I'm flying in the sky, or what? No, I'm just the guy laying in bed snoring. Nothing of the sort is happening. And then we wake up. Do we wake up? We don't wake up. The soul in this world never wakes up. The soul supposedly wakes up and goes into the daydream. I'm this material body. I have all of these particular duties to perform, and I'm totally oblivious to my real identity. So it's night sleep, night dreaming, and daydreaming, and the soul is never awake. Except for the person who's engaged in cultivation of Krishna consciousness. And here Prabhupada is describing the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Nidrahara Vihara Kadi Vijitao. They conquered over the material conditions. They conquered over sleep. They were sleeping a tiny amount per day. Why? How? Just because they were forcing themselves, no, I won't sleep. I positively won't sleep, with great, no. Because they were immersed, enchanted by remembering the pastimes of Krishna, and they were functioning on the spiritual platform. So, to the degree that one is functioning on the spiritual platform, all of the material conditions are reduced: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And to the degree that someone is not immersed on the spiritual platform, absorbed, experiencing life on that elevated platform, to that degree one becomes very, very much concerned, immersed, attracted to these other activities: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Here Prabhupada says that sleeping is taken very seriously. But we know the material world revolves around sex. The conditioned soul is always thinking about sex, fantasizing about sex, making plans for sex. People say, I want to join a yoga class. Why? So I can become an enlightened soul and connect to God. Yoga? No, I want to look better. Why? So I can get a nicer partner. This is the goal of my yoga practice. So it's the direct opposite of what yoga is meant for. Yes? The purpose of yoga is to diminish the ego. Yeah? Make the ego, dissolve the ego, get rid of that nasty thing. But very often people engage in so-called yoga practice and they become physically more fit. The mind becomes a little bit more peaceful because they're engaged in some breathing practice. They're looking better, they're feeling better about themselves, and what happens to the ego? It increases. The ego increases. It sometimes, let's say, it often happens. If there's not an accompanying spiritual practice and some spiritual wisdom, which is imparted during the yoga class. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, the soul is obliged, pushed to engage in these activities more than necessary. Just like you have this term, a foodie. What's a foodie? A foodie is someone, and it's almost taken like a badge of honor. I'm a foodie. I like to go around the world and sample different types of foods. And it's taken, this person is, yes, he's enjoying life. Or even he's a cultured person. He's not restricted to his own particular ethnic food group. He's interested in tasting smorgasbord of flavors. So he goes to different countries and he eats different types of foods. And typically the foods are in the lower modes of nature, yes? Not in the higher modes of nature. But for spiritual advancement, these things have to be restricted. This is dharma. Dharma means the codes, the restrictions that a human being is supposed to accept so that these activities don't block one's spiritual elevation. Yeah, eating, yes, you must eat, absolutely. So the eating is restricted. Don't eat any darn thing, right? Don't just run around being pulled by the tongue. Chaitanya Charitamrita says, and my friend was very fond of quoting me, if I would say, should I have one more sweet? And my friend would quote the verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita. As a joke, he would say, one who is running here and there, trying to satisfy the tongue. What is the result? He cannot achieve Krishna. That's the result. But Kripamoy Prabhu was saying that the scriptures and the sadhus, sometimes they speak like a surgeon, and sometimes they speak like a nurse. Surgeon, this is surgeon talk, yeah? 2 hours a day, you hear that, 2 hours a day, I'll die, right? Typically Prabhupada would say 6 hours out of 24, right? Everyone has a different capacity. We need to rest our bodies so that we can serve Krishna. So the restriction has to be there. And the restriction is that we take Krishna Prasadam. This is the restriction. In Vrindavan, I was just reading in Bhakti Charu Swami's biography. Very nice. And Prabhupada was there in the final months of his stay on this planet. And Prabhupada was there laying on the bed, emaciated, getting ready to go back to Goloka. And Prabhupada inquired to Bhakti Charu Swami, are the devotees getting nice prasadam? And Bhakti Charu Swami said, I'll investigate. So he investigated, and his conclusion was that the prasadam was not so high quality. And Prabhupada said, you please instruct the temple authorities that the devotees should get very nice prasadam. That is their only sense gratification. So Prabhupada speaking like a kind nurse in that case, you know. It's the devotee's only sense gratification. But it should be regulated, right? What happens if one does not regulate the input of prasad? Then the senses become revved up. The senses get fired up, right? And I want to control my other senses. But if I indulge the tongue too much, then it causes pushing on the other senses. And suddenly I feel agitated. I'm not peaceful anymore, right? It's a science. Sense control begins with the tongue, by taking Krishna Prasadam in a measured way. We used to hear when we first joined the movement, you should take so much prasad that you what? Which creature is it compared to? That you waddle like a duck. You never heard that? Yeah, when you're a fresh bhakta, new bhakta, you should take so much prasadam until you waddle like a duck. You know, ducks, how they walk like this. Huh? I'm not sure if someone just made that up, you know, someone who was, but it's not a scriptural injunction. Somehow someone attributed it to Prabhupada. And that sounds like a legitimate quote. But very soon afterwards, one should moderate their prasadam intake. Otherwise, we regret it, right? We're trying to control the senses, and now we've done something which is going to aggravate the senses and put an extra challenge in our way. So eating has to be moderated. That's dharma. One moderates, and one restricts the eating to a particular type of foodstuff, not allowing the tongue to taste whatever it desires in whatever proportion it desires. And typically, Prabhupada, one of his recommendations for someone who would come to him and say, Prabhupada, I'm having a really tough time controlling my desires. Typically, it's sex desire, of course. Prabhupada's recommended, at one point said, eat starvishly. Eat starvishly. So one has to moderate. It means don't eat too much, don't eat too little. For one who's regulated in their habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work, one can mitigate the miseries of material life through the practice of yoga. So in moderation. The yogi shouldn't eat too much and shouldn't eat too little. Both conditions, one will not be peaceful. Like that. Eating, sleeping, mating, of course, we know, in a very, very restricted circumstances. And defending this tendency to defend based on the false ego. I'm the body. And how dare this person say that to me? And I have to stand up for it's injustice. Anything is injustice. There can be injustice where one has to take steps, appropriate steps. But the tendency of the false ego is to immediately want to just respond and not tolerate anything, defending oneself. So this is the lifestyle of Krishna consciousness, a very exact lifestyle which will bring us to the goal, which will bring us to the state of spiritual understanding and spiritual consciousness, and transfer us back home, back to the spiritual world, where there's eating, where there's sleeping. Souls don't need to sleep. But if they're sleeping, what's happening in their sleep? Are they spacing out? Are they in a state of ignorance? If the living entities are sleeping in Goloka Vrindavan, what's happening? They're dreaming of Krishna, full immersion in Krishna, samadhi in Krishna, love of Krishna, right? That's what's happening. Eating, in the spiritual world, it's happening constantly. They're eating, they're enjoying life, going out for a picnic with Krishna and sharing the different foodstuffs, and it's perfect. No one is feeling left out of the party. In the material world, there's always a sense that even you want to have a great relationship with someone, right? I want to have a relationship with this prominent person. And somehow I feel like I'm not part of the inner circle. I feel like I'm an outsider, right? I don't feel like I got the reciprocation I was hoping for, the smile I was hoping for, the acknowledgement I was hoping for. And it's not necessarily that person's fault, because they're not God. There's one Swami who walks very, very slow. He's a prominent personality. And so one devotee asked him, Maharaj, how come you move so slowly? Why do you walk so slowly, move so slowly? He says, because I realized that as I'm moving through a crowd of devotees, there might be some devotees who want to have some interaction with me, who want to have some acknowledgement with me. And I might miss out. I might miss giving them the acknowledgement that they're hoping for. Therefore, when I move slow, I can be more conscious to interact with the devotees that want to have some reciprocation. But Krishna doesn't have those challenges. Krishna's there in the midst of the cowherd boys. They're having their picnic in the forest. And how many cowherd boys are there? How many? Who knows? Uncountable number of cowherd boys, right? Must be. And somehow, inconceivably, it's all accommodated, because everything is favorable in the spiritual world. Here, if you try to fit too many people in a certain space, it really doesn't work, you know? Like in India, like capacity 12, and they've got 27, and 2 more people still want to squeeze in, and somehow it doesn't work, but they manage, you know? But the laws of time and space are all engaged in Krishna's service. Nothing is unfavorable. There's no restrictions. Those are all servants of Krishna. So how many cowherd boys are there? Innumerable. And each cowherd boy is thinking, I'm getting perfect reciprocation from Krishna. Oh, Krishna's looking at me. Krishna's paying attention to me. Like, I'm very dear to Krishna. No one has that sense that, oh, you know, does Krishna really love? Everyone knows Krishna loves me. So that's the eating in the spiritual world. I have to catch a train after some time, so we're going to stop the class early. Does anyone have any questions or discussion? Yes, Yamuna.
Thank you so much for your session. Well, when I was reading this verse the first time, I was like, oh yes. And then somehow it created an urgency in myself that I don't want to sleep so much. And now I have the problem that I cannot go to sleep enough. And how would you regulate this, that you don't go to bed?
You can self-regulate, or you'll be forced to regulate because your health will decline, and then you'll be forced to sleep more than you want. So we have to use our intelligence and understand how much is an appropriate amount of rest for us, and especially sleeping before midnight. I'm saying that, the hours before midnight are much more beneficial than the hours after midnight. I've heard that 2 hours before midnight is double the benefit of the hours after midnight. This is typically what's said. So a devotee who's going to wake up at, let's say, 3:30, 4 o'clock, it's good to try to get 6 hours of rest, 6 hours of continuous rest, if needed. The strong statements in the scripture are meant to inspire us, are meant to push us toward a higher standard, but we also have to understand what our capacity is, and we have to know that we're not running a 100-yard dash, we're running a marathon, so we have to consciously adjust our life so that it's balanced. And if you think about balance, just like sometimes you're walking along in some place, and then there's a little, raised area. You think, let me walk on that raised area. It's only this wide. And then you're walking and keeping it. And what is it? It's a constant endeavor to keep the balance, isn't it? It's not like, okay, now I'm balanced, everything's fine. No, it's a constant endeavor to keep the balance. So the devotee has to regulate their activities, and almost they have to do it in a, it's not a one-time endeavor. One has to do it as one continues in their spiritual life. So those activities that need to be regulated are, of course, eating. How many times have I overeaten? Well, it's a regular thing. After again I did it. Again I did it. Again I did it. So one has to constantly be training themselves, practicing to eat the proper amount, to rest the proper amount. Otherwise, we can't engage in our spiritual activities in a balanced and happy mood. We're supposed to practice Krishna consciousness in a happy mood, and we can't be happy if we're not rested enough. And we can't be happy if we sleep too much, because then we're affected too much by the mode of ignorance. So exactly what the proper amount is for you, that you have to understand through experience. This amount's not enough, this amount is too much. And then moderate it and understand that you're running a marathon here. And in order to successfully complete that marathon, these things have to be figured out. Don't try to go beyond your capacity, otherwise you'll just become disturbed. At the same time, we have to apply pressure to ourselves. Otherwise, the tendency can be there to become lazy or think, yeah, I'm doing just fine. But Krishna consciousness requires constantly increasing our endeavor, increasing our commitment, increasing our dedication, expanding our service to the best of our ability. Is that okay? Yes, please.
You spoke about injustice, and personally I really dislike injustice towards others or towards myself. And how do you deal with, for example, injustice towards yourself? How to deal with it?
How do you deal with injustice towards yourself? If you are a person who has experienced injustice, then you should take the appropriate steps to deal with that. And there are people who are appointed to deal with cases of injustice. Those are typically people who are in a position of authority. So you can approach those people who are appointed. That's their duty. to deal with cases of injustice. And you can say, this is what happened, and I'm requesting you please attend to it. You please take care of this. And if they don't take care of it, then you should go to the person who's their superior. And if that person doesn't take care of it, then you can appeal again. And you can do this all as far as possible in a not easy, but in a dispassionate way. In the sense that if we become too disturbed mentally, emotionally, it's very difficult not to become disturbed emotionally. But one thing that we have to try to maintain, protect, preserve through all the circumstances of life, and life throws a lot of circumstances at us, is our remembrance of Krishna. Yes? If we forget Krishna, then whatever we're doing, somehow it's not a perfect response. It's an imperfect response. So in the course of dealing with injustice or dealing with any circumstance of life, we should always keep our mind fixed on Krishna and take the appropriate steps. Be methodical but dispassionate as far as possible. And on some level, at some point, when our emotions have hopefully calmed down to some degree, we have to apply the wisdom we've received from the great sages, from Krishna himself. And what is that wisdom? That wisdom is to understand that my life in this material world is my own doing. I've brought myself to this material world, and while I've been in the material world, I've done a lot of things which were not nice. A lot of things. I've been insensitive to a lot of souls. I've caused a lot of pain to other souls. Tattenu kampam susamikshamano. And this circumstance that I'm experiencing, it's not the one circumstance which is not under the control of Krishna. That circumstance is also under the control of Krishna. And so at some point, hopefully sooner than later, we have to process that experience through Krishna conscious understanding. I've caused a lot of pain to others during the course of my material existence in this material world, and Krishna is giving me some token reaction for all of the pain that I've given to others. We don't preach that to others. If someone comes to us and says, I've just had a very horrible experience, we sympathize, we empathize, we give support, we give some, as much to whatever ability we have, we give some advice on how to navigate that circumstance. We might even approach authorities on behalf of that person to try to rectify the situation. But for ourselves, we have to have that internal processing mechanism in order to see it as we're instructed to see it, that this is a token reaction of my own misdeeds. And it's Krishna's mercy to help me become cleansed of the tendency to be insensitive to others and purged of my desire to stay in the material world. So both things can happen simultaneously. It's not that I just accept the horrible experience without taking any steps. Steps should be taken. That's our duty. But internally we have to work on viewing it from the directions of the scriptures and the saintly persons. And we have so many examples in our scriptures. Is that okay?
Yeah, and intellectually, it's okay.
Yeah, I know.
To understand with the brain and philosophy, but when really the bound is really deep, then the heart is not so much brain.
Mm-hmm.
The bound stay. Intellectually, one can understand.
Yeah.
I can understand.
Yeah, sure.
But thank you very much.
Yeah, easier said than done, no question about it. I have people that have done small things to me, and I'm still harboring resentment 5-10 years later. And it wasn't even a big thing, it was something. And I know I've done that to other people. I know it. But still, it's hard to let go. It's hard to... when it's easier to let go is when we're deeply nourished in Krishna consciousness, when we're really spiritually full as much as we can be, and we're experiencing some spiritual happiness, some spiritual satisfaction. Suddenly the idea of, you know what, I forgive that person. I forgive that person. In fact, I wish good for that person. That's an elevated state of Krishna consciousness that we can have when we're feeling spiritual satisfaction. So, if we're not nourishing ourselves spiritually by a good daily practice, nice chanting, nice hearing and chanting, reading the scriptures, doing some seva as much as we can, then it becomes much more of a challenge. Because then we're just stuck with our mind, with our emotions, and even our intellect is saying yes, but, and we're saying, I don't care. You know, the wound is so deep and I feel so much resentment towards that person. Does anyone want to add something to that? Yes, Prabhu, please.
Yes, I've had to, in my life also, personally deal with it. And of course, one thing I've learned from psychologists is that you have to, I mean, we're not self-realized. So in our state, we have to put boundaries. Anger comes when people cross the boundaries of our, what's that called, comfort zone.
Sure, it's legitimate to have boundaries and, if possible, avoid people that cross those boundaries, and in other cases, to communicate with people that cross those boundaries. And that's part of being methodical and doing the needful, absolutely. Sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes it's just like you can try to put up boundaries, and despite whatever boundaries you try to put up, those boundaries are crossed. And then it's a different challenge. The challenge of, okay, this is somehow an unavoidable circumstance, you know? And I just have to practice tolerance and, you know, absorbing my mind in Krishna, because here's someone who has, you know, much more power than me, and I have no way of responding to counteract them. Just like Haridas Thakur, what could he do? He was being attacked by some vicious people. He took shelter of Krishna, and that was the perfect response. He couldn't speak to them. He couldn't reason with them. He couldn't avoid them. So he just took full shelter of Krishna, which we should do under all circumstances, yeah? Is that something else, Prabhu? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.